You know the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? Of course you do. It's one of the foundational narratives for all of Western civilization. It's a drama that has deeply shaped how we think about humanity, innocence, and sin. And for literally thousands of years, this account from the book of Genesis has been viewed as a singular, divinely inspired truth, a story that was believed to stand completely on its own in all of human history. But is it, really? Well, when you start to peel back the layers of history and you look at the cultures that were neighbors to ancient Israel, a much more complex and, frankly, a much more fascinating picture starts to emerge. See, what scholars now understand is that the story of the fall wasn't created in a vacuum. It's actually a masterful retelling. It's a brilliant synthesis of powerful mythological themes that had been circulating for centuries, even millennia, long before Genesis was ever written down. So let's start digging. Our first stop on this investigation, we're going to track the archetype of the first man, Adam, and see if we can follow his mythological footprints back in time. Our first clue takes us to ancient Mesopotamia, to a figure named Adapa. In his story, he was known as the model of men, created by the gods with incredible wisdom, but, and this is key, not with eternal life. And his story has some absolutely astonishing echoes. Just look at how their tests are structured. It's almost the same setup. Adapa is summoned to heaven and offered the food of immortality, but he's tricked into refusing it. Sound familiar? Just like Adam, he's faced with a test involving food that will decide his mortality. And what happens? They both fail. And for both, the consequence is the loss of eternal life for all of humanity. Okay, let's move on to our next piece of evidence. This one comes from one of the oldest stories ever written, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And in it, we meet a character named Enkidu, a wild man who really mirrors Adam's original primordial state. I mean, the shared template here is unmistakable. Both are made from the earth, from dust or from clay. They both start out innocent, naked, living peacefully among the animals. And crucially, for both of them, the big transformation comes through an encounter with a woman. That encounter causes them to lose their innocence, but they gain something new in its place, a higher form of consciousness. And get this, the Epic of Gilgamesh says that after his encounter, Enkidu gains wisdom and becomes like a god. That is the exact same language the serpent uses to tempt Eve, and it's the same result God himself acknowledges after they eat the fruit, that humanity has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. The parallel is just undeniable. So if Adam has these ancient precursors, then what about Eve? Well, our investigation now turns to the mythological roots of the first woman. And believe me, they run just as deep. Her story leads us to the Sumerians and a goddess named Ninti. And the key to understanding the connection is hidden in a brilliant bit of linguistic wordplay in the Sumerian language. Here's the crucial point. It's a pun. In Sumerian, the word ti means two different things. It means rib, and it also means life. So in the myth, the goddess Nenti is created from a god's rib to heal him, making her the Lady of the Rib. But her name also means Lady of Life. This is the exact same wordplay we see in Genesis. Eve is created from Adam's rib, and she's later named the mother of all living. It's a direct literary inheritance. And, this pattern isn't just limited to the Near East. If we journey over to ancient Greece, we find another powerful parallel in the story of Pandora, the very first mortal woman. Think about it. Both Eve and Pandora are these figures whose actions bring a perfect golden age to a definitive end, kicking off the beginning of human suffering. Both are created after man, and both myths were later used to frame women as the origin of humanity's troubles, a theme that the early church fathers explicitly linked when they discussed Eve's role in the fall. All right, now for the most mysterious character in the entire garden, the serpent. This figure also has a long and shifting history across ancient cultures, and uncovering its secret is pretty fascinating. Let's go back to Gilgamesh for a second. In that epic, the hero finds a special plant that can restore youth, but while he's taking a bath, a serpent slithers up and steals it. In this version, the serpent isn't some evil tempter. It's just an agent of nature that deprives humanity of eternal life. The author of Genesis takes this basic idea, a serpent connected to the loss of immortality, and gives it a profound new moral and theological dimension.
But this is where the story takes a really radical turn, because not everyone in the ancient world read the Genesis account and saw the serpent as the villain. Some people saw it in a completely different light.
A number of early Christian and Jewish groups, who we now call the Gnostics, completely flipped the story on its head. In their view, the serpent wasn't a deceiver at all. It was a revealer of secret knowledge.
This comparison shows just how different their perspective was. The Gnostics argued that the God of the Old Testament was actually a jealous, lesser deity who wanted to keep humanity ignorant. The serpent, they claimed, was a messenger from a higher, true God, sent to liberate Adam and Eve by encouraging them to eat from the tree of knowledge. So for the Gnostics, the fall wasn't a tragic sin, it was the first step toward enlightenment.
So, where does all this evidence leave us? Well, it leads to an appreciation of the Genesis story not as some simple myth, but as an incredibly sophisticated work of literary and theological art.
As we've seen, the core elements of the story were already out there, scattered across the cultural landscape of the ancient world. You got the failed test for immortality from the story of Adapa, the civilized wild man from Enkidu, the lady of the rib from Ninti, the curious first woman from Pandora, and the serpent linked to lost immortality straight out of Gilgamesh.
The true genius of the biblical authors, then, wasn't invention from scratch. It was their ability to take these well-known, powerful mythological ingredients and weave them into something entirely new. They transform them, creating a unique monotheistic story that focuses on moral choice, on sin, and on humanity's relationship with a single God. And that leaves us with a final thought. Recognizing that one of our most foundational stories is part of a vast ancient river of human storytelling doesn't diminish it. Instead, it connects it to a timeless, cross-cultural search for answers to the biggest questions. Where do we come from? Why is there suffering? And what does it mean to be human?